Do you have the Trapper Keeper with you now?
Listen, I wanted to surprise you with it in the middle of the podcast, so you can't see it. You're not allowed to look at it.
Okay.
It's very
Okay.
special.
I guess.
But I will give you this. I will give you this information. It is not a Lisa Frank one.
Oh, that was my question with it,
Okay,
Lisa
well,
Frank.
here's the thing. I looked for a Lisa Frank one. I'm not paying $200 for a Trapper Keeper.
Got it. Heard.
But,
Heard.
yeah,
Yeah.
her stuff has gotten collectible.
What?
Yeah. Although I
Do I
feel the
have
one
a...
that I purchased should be collectible. I think it seems area appropriate. See, it's right here. You can't see it. It's
That's
right
okay.
here.
Surprise me.
So
I'd be
good. It's
really happy
so
to
good.
get surprised.
Welcome to the Road to Real Estate podcast with John and Lauren. This week we discuss what to do first as a new agent. Also, if you like the Nespresso machine you see on your screen, we're giving it away on February 28th. To enter to win, there's a QR code at the end of this video, and there's a link down in the description below.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Road to Real Estate podcast. I'm John, and I'm here with my lovely host, Lauren. Today, before we get started, let me get my notes. I have these notes I got to pull out. Hold on. For those of the people that are not listening or watching on YouTube, this is for Spotify. That is second and third grade royalty right there. You hear that? Jealousy just struck all the people that are 40-some.
Can I see that? What is that? Can I see it?
Oh, I will show it to you after everybody likes and subscribes and clicks the notification bell so they can get the next episode.
Oh,
Right. I do have my notes out. All right, you want to see this thing? It's pretty good.
I do.
It's
The
very
suspense is
80s.
killing me.
I tried to find the most 80s one I could find. It is official Trapper Keeper. You can see it there in the binding.
Oh, yes.
Just so you know, there's a 9 to 10-year-old out there version of me back in the 80s who is so jealous because my parents didn't get me one.
Yep.
Yeah, I just threw shade.
There you go.
They're going to hear this episode and be like, we failed as parents. They didn't. They did a good
Your
job.
parents listen? That's so nice.
Oh, well, I gotta get our streams up, you know? I would say half of these streams are my family.
You must not be a middle child.
I'm such a middle child. Anyways, so today's topics, we're going to go into a little bit of legal stuff first. I'm going to have Lauren do all the Fair Housing Act stuff. And then we're going to go right into the antitrust laws. So, Miss Lauren, you want to take it away?
Hey, guys, don't discriminate against people.
Oh, that was simple.
Yeah, done.
Yeah, it's easy. All right, guys, you ready to move on?
Yeah.
There's a little bit more to it, guys.
Yeah, just kidding. When it comes to housing, you have to think about the laws that were created over time. People have been buying and selling real estate forever, as soon as they started trying to settle land. And one of the things that we look at is that the evolution of our country and what was happening and how it was very legal to discriminate against people early on. And as time has gone, we have had more laws to protect people. And so specifically in 1968, we passed the Fair Housing Act. That's super, super important because it prohibits specifically the discrimination based on race, religion, national origin, sex, disability, and a few other things depending on what state you live in. It was signed into law April 11th, 1968 by Lyndon B. Johnson. That's kind of a big deal because you have to know what was happening. Vietnam War was ending and people were either coming home or not coming home. And soldiers who had fought alongside, everyone else were suddenly not able to move to the areas they wanted to based on their race. Specifically, there was a lot of casualties in the African American and Hispanic populations. And they were finding that even though they had fought alongside people and they were an equal and they were really important to the war, suddenly they were discriminated against once they were back here. And so it was creating a lot of civil unrest. This is also the time when we heard Dr. Martin Luther King doing his speeches and working really hard for civil rights. And so they were really debating about what this law should be in the Senate until the unfortunate assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And once that happened, the president at that time was Lyndon Johnson, and he really pushed through this fair housing, and he did it to honor Dr. Martin Luther King in order to do that. So this was passed in April of 1968, 7 days after he died. So those protected classes, and these are the ones that are nationally protected, are race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, and disability. Obviously, you should not discriminate against anyone. However, your state may have additional overlays depending on where you are, or possibly your city or municipality. Specifically, Atlanta and Georgia has the 7, as well as age, domestic relationship status, parental status, gender identity, or sexual orientation as well. So wherever you are, you need to know your local laws. And these are really important. I think Jonathan and I call it real estate jail.
Yeah.
Right? Like these
you
are
don't want to
things
be
you
there.
could lose your license for. Like if you get caught discriminating, you could lose your license. And it can be super easy.
The best way to not get caught is not to do it.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, and sometimes there's some sneaky things that sneak in, right?
Yeah, there's some stuff that people do inadvertently because they're trying to help, and and it unfortunately that's gets you in just as much trouble. Don't assume anything. Just yeah.
Well, even just last week, we had a lead that called in for our real estate business, and she asked me, "Hey, I'm very conservative, and I'm Catholic, and I want to make sure that I'm in a conservative community. Can you tell me, what areas will be conservative?" Well, red
Not
flags
Atlanta.
everywhere.
We are in Georgia. You don't have to go
Red
far.
flags. Yeah, you are in Georgia. But I can't tell her
Yeah,
that,
of course.
like
Yeah.
maybe you need to look at, hey, we're very publicized at who voted for what, maybe you'd like to look on some
Look at a
voting
voter's
maps.
map. Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe you want to base your search around a religious institution that you feel connected to, but it's not something where it's, oh, well, all the Catholics live right here.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
fair housing violation, right? And so, was she a plant that was trying to get me to, to steer her one way or another, or is it just a person who's looking for her people? I don't know, but it can be something as innocent as that we have to be really aware of.
Yeah, of course. And the problem is being in this industry, you're trying to help. So in my head, they say something like that, and you're like, well, I can find houses over here, da, da, da. And you jumped right in. You know what I mean? You're not on purpose. You're just trying to make your client happy, And so there's things where you have to be real cautious of how you deliver stuff. So for me, I always kind of cast a wider net. They can choose to go narrower, but I always try to CYA, and give them a bigger area and a bigger price range. I just give them range because you never know. This wise realtor once told me that just because someone's looking to buy at a certain price point doesn't mean they're going to, in a certain style. You'd be surprised when nostalgia hits and they buy something because it reminds them of some place or a place that they grew up in, So I always cast a little bit wider net than, catches extra fish.
I remember one time I was showing houses, and this was it was a young couple, and they had not quite this was maybe their second house, and there was a significant pay increase between this one and the previous house, and you could tell they were really moving up, maybe 100,000 or more. Like it was a really big price jump, and they were really excited. And we walked into a house, and it was completely outdated. The chandelier was gold, and it had like leafy, ornate, and like the light bulbs were like candles, and it was very gaudy, very out of date, not in style at all. And I walked in and said, "Whoa, look at that chandelier." And she said, "Oh my gosh, it's the most beautiful chandelier
Oh,
I've
that's
ever seen in my
awesome.
life."
There's a
And I
place for
said,
everyone.
"Yes, it is."
It's a good thing you didn't speak too fast.
Yeah, I didn't say why I thought wow, but
Yeah, exactly. No, that's cool though. But there's, like I said, there's a place for everyone, and you never know what is going to draw someone in. I mean, walk into a house that's been painted like the rainbow in terms of really intense, vibrant colors. And let's be honest, when we're trying to sell houses, we try to white down and dumb down everything. We try to tell people before we put this on the market, let's take some of this color out. Not everybody has the same color palette as you, but you get that one family that walks in there and they're like, this is it. Like they're not the only ones that like it like that. It's just maybe harder to find a person that wants that. You know what I mean? So anyways, there's a place for everyone. Do you want to go deeper into legal? Do you want to go through the
Yeah, there's some terms that are specific because they were violated so many times that they made specific terms. And so the first one we want to talk about is called blockbusting, and it's the practice of encouraging homeowners to sell below market value because something has changed in the neighborhood, specifically influx of minorities.
Yeah, that was big back in the day. So back in the day, a realtor would go knock on doors and tell them, hey, you might want to sell now. Your property value is about to drop because you know who moved in down the street. And yeah, very frowned upon.
We even have a colloquialism, right? There goes the neighborhood,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of
This
course.
is the this is the
Yeah,
epitome of
exactly.
that.
So yeah,
Nowadays, there's more information for sellers. The agent is not the sole information for who's moving in and all of that. So I don't see this one as often. However, you do need to be careful, especially if there's an influx of a certain culture or certain protected class. You just need to be careful.
yeah, yeah, no. I mean, this one's like because of the access to information. This one, I'm not saying it doesn't happen anymore. I'm sure there are places where this happens.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays with the amount of information and stuff, I would imagine people are making their own advised decisions on what they're doing. It's not a random person knocking on your door, getting you to sell your home. You know what I mean? I'm not saying people aren't selling because of cultural shifts and changes in their neighborhoods, but it's generally a person making that decision on their own beliefs and not someone knocking on the door telling them, hey, just so you know. You know what I mean? So, like I said, I think this one doesn't happen as much. But once again, it's a big country and a big world, and I'm sure it happens some, you know.
And probably where I see this could be a fault in this day might be for an older generation, maybe an original
Yeah,
owner.
that's true.
Yeah,
That's
trying
true.
to get them out because maybe they're not as computer savvy or as aware. And um, maybe there's that still fear or some bias in their mind that hasn't, made its way out.
The next one, this happened to my parents. The
Oh, really?
redlining, yeah, redlining.
Okay. So
Ended up being a big
so
class action
let's
lawsuit and
let's
everything.
hold on. Let's define it. Redlining is the practice of denying services to eligible applicants based on their race.
Yes, so this was actually this one happens more from the mortgage side than the realtor side. So let's get that straight. So this is not one that realtors do, but what you'll find is lending companies will literally, the reason it's called redlining is take a red marker and circle certain areas of the map and be like, we're not issuing loans for those areas. And they're making that decision based upon the populations that live there, you know? And so what happened to me is, or not me, my parents, they were buying, and my dad specializes in restructuring inner city churches. So they found a place that they wanted to live. And it was one of those things where they were jumping through hurdle after hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. And it just would not get this loan. And like they were qualified for the loan. This is not their first house. Probably their 15th house. They moved a lot. They finally did get the loan, but it came out later that the reason they were having such a hard time was because that company had redlined and they just kept proving, like meeting that bar. So there ended up being a lawsuit and everything else on that and class action suit. And that's not long ago. That we're talking in the 2000s, which you would.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was way more recently than I
I was
thought.
an adult when this happened. So, I want to say 10 years ago.
Wow.
So this still happens, which is absolutely insane with all the information we have out there. You would think that this is gone,
Mhm.
on this level, because the amount of oversight that everything has, you would think a big company doing mortgages and stuff would get red flagged really quick for this, but we're talking within 10 years this has happened.
Well, yeah, no, that's really interesting. And the other thing is that it's the map too, right?
Hmm.
It's based on the map too. It's very interesting that happened so recently.
Yeah. You want to take the next one?
Steering is our next one. So steering is the illegal practice of guiding or steering someone to purchase or rent a home in a specific area or community based on their race, religion, gender, color, familial status, or disability. Here's the Irish section. Why don't you come over here? Don't you want to be with your culture? Don't you want to live here? This is where the Irish grocery store is. This is where the Irish churches. This is where all these things are. Don't you want to be here? And so this is just encouraging or even assuming that somebody wants to be immersed in whatever
Yeah.
culture
This
you
one was the
are.
one I think most agents inadvertently do. Because
Mhm.
this one is the one that you can, look, we just discussed actually a little bit ago, where you're trying to help your client and you're trying to find them a place to do it, and you inadvertently steer. So this one is the one I think is the most relevant of the ones here in terms of getting yourself in trouble.
Yeah, I don't remember if I told you this on or off camera, Jonathan, but I have a really great example for steering. One of our agents on our team was helping a single dad with a daughter. He had a young daughter, and they were looking at houses.
Hmm.
And she kept saying, "Oh, we can't look at that house. It has two yellow lines. Oh, we can't look at that house. It has two yellow lines. Oh, we can't." And for this agent, she felt like she was protecting this family
Yeah.
because in her mind, two yellow lines, referring to the lines in the middle of the road, right, being yellow,
Hmm.
meant that there was a higher speed limit. And she was concerned about having a little girl that, having that kind of speed limit on a road where they wanted to live could be a safety hazard. However, that's not the agent's choice,
Yeah.
right? That's the buyer's choice. So that's an example of familia status that is a positive thing. She's not being negative towards them, but trying to steer them or push them to a certain type of house because she thinks that's what's best for them, not because they decided, right? If they said, "Hey, I don't want a house that has this two yellow line," that's different. Great. 100%. But if you tell them that's your decision, not theirs. And so you could have a conversation and maybe they choose that that's their decision, but you would never want to steer them to
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Any decisions they make on their own is fine, but you trying to guide them to make that decision is what gets you in trouble.
And I do find that this is the one where people have the best intentions.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. This is usually comes around pretty innocently. And also there are times when the client will directly ask for something, and although we is our job to provide for them what they ask, we can't pinpoint a place on the map and say this is where you best fit in. Even though they ask for it, you want to give them a broader area so it's safer to go like this, to go with school system or within a city, but you can't go with this block on this. You know what I mean? And so even if the client is asking for it, you don't want to start giving that search. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I
just like
don't know the right way
just
to
like
say
our
that.
friend. Yeah, our friend that was I said that called in and was asking like, "Hey, where are the more conservative areas? Where are the Catholic churches? Where those are? I mean, Catholic churches are geographical. Like I could talk about the location of them, but I can't say, oh, this one's better. That one's not. What I can say is, hey, check the voting map. However, I do know that these private Catholic high schools are located in this location, this location, this location. So I'm providing information. I'm not providing the line in which in which
Yeah,
we're
you're not drawing that
right.
line and putting them like you wouldn't live in this neighborhood. This is a conservative Catholic neighborhood. I totally get it. Our next one is price fixing, and it does affect our industry, and I'll let you do the definition, but just to me, I feel like this one is much bigger in other industries, like where there's monopolies or a bunch of companies getting together and setting the price on a product. For us, it has to do with our compensation. So you want to do the definition on that real quick? Or?
Yeah, price fixing is the practice of setting the price of a good or service to make a particular price a standard. Any agreement, even if it's just implied with other brokerages to set a standard commission rate, is a violation of antitrust laws.
Okay. So the way that works is within our brokerage, I can talk to any other agent about what they're trying to do with their compensation with the client. But what you cannot do is talk to an agent from a different brokerage and go, listen, we're trying to get X%. Do you want to also be X%? And then all of a sudden, this entire area, every brokerage charges X%. Not to get everybody into algebra, but if X is the same through all of them, you've set the price. And that's how that works. So within your own brokerage, you're allowed to discuss how things are going for you and your clients. You know, that's one company. But once you start mentioning the compensation and stuff that you're trying to get on your contracts to other brokerages and they try to match, now it's not fair to the consumer because we've set the price. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great way to say it. The other thing that you need to note with price fixing is that your broker can set a company policy. That is completely allowed. However, your broker can't talk to another broker, right? Within your own company, there can be agreements. Like
you can set a minimum for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have heard in Atlanta there is a broker, a larger broker that if you go below 2% commission on the listing side, you have to get approval from the broker in order to do that. So that is not price fixing. That's a company policy.
That's different. And then the next one we got is group boycotting. This one very closely relates to price fixing to me. That's when you and other brokerages get together and make a decision. And I'll let you do the definitions before I start going on my story.
No, I mean that's basically the definition. You can't get together with a group of other agents and then and boycott, right?
Yeah. For instance, our brokerage A talks to brokerage B, and we both decide we're gonna do everything and never do any business with brokerage C, and then that's boycotting, and now we're piling up and going against that brokerage. So we do business with each other. We do this, do that. And by making that decision, we kind of push them out of town. And that's illegal. That makes sense. Basically building a monopoly.
Yeah. No, it's definitely frowned upon. But it applies to other brokerages. It also applies to services, right? We can't all agree that we're not going to use Zillow anymore. Agents really love to hate Zillow. And so, we just need to be careful that we don't all agree to do something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that.
And then the next one we have is the tie-in agreement. And this one I feel is pretty self-explanatory. This is where you go and you talk to your client and you go, hey, listen, I'll sell your house if you buy a house through me. That way you're getting double ends on the deal and stuff. It doesn't have to do necessarily with buying and selling the house. You can also use it if you have a side company where you do renovations, stuff like that. Anything where you say, I'll do this for you, as long as you also agree to use me for this other service. And that service doesn't have to be directly to do with sales. It can just be any of your side businesses. Say you have a moving company or a mortgage company, or like you can be like, I'll sell your house as long as you use my mortgage or my this. That's a tie-in. I'm sure there's a better way to explain that.
Yeah, well, it can be between multiple people in a transaction, right? So a seller could say, hey, I'll agree, to accept your contract if you agree to do something else, right? So maybe they want to buy one house and then they want to use a painter. You have to use my painter if you're going to do this. So tying it with another service attached to the transaction. And so that transaction pivots on that something else outside of that original transaction. So it's very illegal. You have to be super careful with it. I also see people sometimes try to do it with commissions, right? So commission has to be paid in Georgia through your broker. and doing things like bartering or trading services is highly illegal when it comes to that. So even though the tie-in is specifically talking about in order to close a home, there is kind of an extension that I do see sometimes on commission as well.
Mm-hmm. And then the last one is market allocation. And I'll be honest, I wrote this down, and I'm going to need your definition for it.
Well, market allocation is just dividing up the market, saying like,
Oh,
hey,
yeah, I'll
Jonathan,
do this.
I'm
Yeah,
going to be
yeah.
in this zip code. You're going to be in that zip code. That way we don't compete for listings. We
Yeah.
both stay on our sides. So
Eliminating
anytime
competition.
that you do that, yeah, it is not allowed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a simple one. You take North Atlanta, I'll take South Atlanta. I'll do I-20 South, you do I-20 North, and then we don't ever butt heads. Those are your people, these are my people. And it's funny you call it market allocation, but once you do that, you are basically breaking all the other rules, because that allows you to set the price for that area, because then you're the only show in town, and it allows you to do, once you do that one, it kind of like gets a slippery slope. You basically are doing everything on that whole thing, because you're basically group boycotting, because you're taking over the area. You're basically price fixing. You're basically going through the whole list once you do that one.
And we're talking geographically right now, but you can also divide up customers like, hey, you take the customers that are, buying below 500, I'll take customers 500 to $1 million, and then we'll let this person do $1 million above. Any dividing up of customers, any dividing up of products, right? Anything like to be my market allocation in real estate. Anything that limits the customer's access to competition.
Makes sense. So there you go, folks. That is the legal part. Now, a lot of us did that on the national side. That's the no fun part. Let's be honest. No one wants to go through that, and we're going to deal with it on a daily. Let's talk about you've got your license now. You are officially a real estate agent. And I know we touched on this on our very first episode, and I know we're going to touch on it probably again and again. Unlike other industries, there is no real guide once you get it. Like, you go to culinary school or you go to tech school, they train you for the job, and then you graduate, and then you start applying for jobs. And then there's usually some kind of training program that gets you going to do that job, and that's what you do. Real estate, I'm sure most of you have noticed, is you go through this course and you spend all this time learning about RESPA and TILA Acts and Fair Housing Acts, and it's all legal. There is not much at all. There's nothing at all that tells you during your entire training how to sell a house, how to get customers, how to buy a house. None of that information is in there at all. Like, not one thing. Cool, you can figure out meets and bounds and figure out a land survey now. It does you no good. It makes, it
You're
really
not a
doesn't.
surveyor.
Yeah, we're not a surveyor, it turns out. So there's all this stuff in there that you have to learn, and you get out, and it's like, to me, it was the one I kept waiting. Well, maybe next chapter will show me like how to be a real estate agent. Oh, maybe this next, and I just kept going. Like, at some point, this thing is going to tell me how to do my job, and it's not in there. It does not exist. And then you go out and you have to find a brokerage and stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about right now: how to be a real estate agent. Fun, right?
Fun.
So, you want to tell them the first steps?
Yeah. When you pass your test, you have a choice in Georgia specifically if you want the commission to hold your license, or if you're going to transfer it immediately to a brokerage. Once you've made that decision, there's a lot of ways to make that decision. But once you've made that decision, you are now a broker, or an agent. When you get home, the first thing you need to do is start looking at your schedule. What does your calendar look like? Mm-hmm. There's post-licensing classes that hopefully will teach you a little bit more about selling, especially if you do a high-quality one. But your calendar and your schedule is really the first step.
I agree. And for that, we've mentioned it on every episode so far. Time blocking, people. Time blocking. You can get tired of me saying time blocking, but a lot of people get in this industry and either they've done something to be financially set for a set number of months and they have a certain amount of time to sell home before they get into danger financially. And a lot of us come into it while maintaining our old job and doing this one on the side while we grow our business. And it's real easy because when you're a new agent, a lot of the stuff you have to do to build your business isn't fun. So it's real easy to keep putting it on the side and not doing the job and focus on everything else in your life. So if you block a portion of your schedule and just do that grind, even if it's for a couple hours a day, say you do 2 hours a day because that's all you have because your life is very busy, and you put it in every day, it will show results with time, and during that time blocking, for me, it's making the phone calls, letting people know that you're an agent. It should be pretty easy to call your friends and family to let them know, I just got my realtor's license, this, that, and the other thing. But you got to be consistent and be top of mind. So there's a schedule that you do. I always forget the name of it. It's DTD2.
Yeah, that's a Keller Williams model, but yeah, it's a schedule to call your database based on the letters of the alphabet in order to do that. So
It allows for even calling because it's real easy to look in your phone and go, I'm not calling that person today. I'll skip that one and call the next person. Whereas with DTD2, you go through it consistently and it's spaced evenly so that theoretically you're calling the same number of people every week and you call them on a circulating basis and keeps you in touch with them. So I guess to do that, you need to build a database, right?
Yeah, you kind of jumped way down the road.
Yeah, I jumped way down there. Listen, I'm still going through this. I am the rookie here. I've only been doing this for, I guess we're going on 3 months, 4 months now. I don't know. I got it in November. So we're at the end of February. So we're 4 months in. So, basically creating a list of everybody putting in their names, phone numbers, every information you have. And then when you do call them, you try to get more information. If you have their name and phone number, try and get an email. Let them know that you can provide information to them. You're not pushing yourself on them as a salesperson. Like, hey, wouldn't you like to know what your property is worth? I can email that to you and just keep adding to that database. I'm still learning that part though. So,
yeah, no, there's a process to the database. I'm going to jump back to time blocking.
Yeah,
So,
please do. I got going. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You said all the right things. They're all great things to say because we do need to do, inform the family, create that database. That's so, so, so important. But when we look at the first step of the time blocking, this may or may not be the first time that you have been an independent contractor or self-employed. And it's a very different schedule and it's a very different mindset because what's going to happen is you sit down at your computer, you have your real estate license and nobody's coming, right? Nobody's going to just find you and say, hey, can you sell my house? Hey, can you help me buy a house? You're going to have to work for every piece of it. And the first step is to arrange your schedule for the whole week. Decide what days you're working, what days you're not working. This is not a traditional 9-to-5 job unless you decide it is, right? And so when you look at your time blocking, you need to figure out, is your weekend Saturday and Sunday? As a new agent, open houses are most likely Saturdays and Sundays. Are those days you're going to work? Maybe they're not. Maybe you have a religion that doesn't allow you or you choose not to work on a certain day. Maybe that works for you. I know that some people decide they're going to do 5-day work weeks. Some people decide 6 days. Some people say, hey, I'm doing 7 days until I get my first contract. All completely okay because you've made a decision and you've put it in writing and you've planned around it. So taking that calendar is going to be really important and making those decisions. How many days a week are you going to work? How many weeks a year are you going to work? When are you taking it off? Because the cruel irony of real estate is people like to look at houses when they are off work.
Exactly.
So sometimes that perfect weekend for you to go, like the Christmas or New Year's or 4th of July, may also be when people are most available to look at houses. Mm-hmm. So you need to first take a step back and think, okay, how many vacations do I take in a year? Do I take it quarterly? Do I take it in the summer? Do I take Christmas? What does your vacation schedule look like? So beyond time blocking, I would take a step back and look at the whole calendar and figure out what am I not going to work?
Don't you know that all real estate agents take their vacations during closing?
Well, I try to.
I think everyone does. I like it's one of those things, and it's just the way it works. Let's be honest. Like you end a vacation, and that's exactly when something's going to happen. It's Murphy's Law. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a joke. We say like, "Oh, my business has slowed down. Maybe I should plan a vacation."
Yeah.
Because as soon as you try to relax or turn your phone off, it starts ringing. So putting that into place ahead of time really helps out. And there's a lot of people online that will talk about how to do the schedules and to do your vacationing. It's something to think about, right? If you started a job, you in a new company, your company would say, "Hey, you have 2 weeks of vacation. You have 7 sick days. You have," it defines everything for you. As an independent contractor, that is legally not allowed to be defined by anyone except for yourself. So go ahead and look at that. Block out what your week looks like. So if you are going to work Monday through Friday, you then have to protect your time. Because if you're working at home, that laundry, the dryer might buzz, the dog might need to go out, the mailman might show up and need something, your neighbor might knock on the door, or those guys selling you the roof or the new windows might knock on your door and want to talk to you. So you have to protect this time the same way you would if you were in an office or in a traditional job. And so looking at that, the 2 to 3 hours of lead generation that Jonathan was referring to is imperative. Without lead generation, you have no clients. And lead generation is defined as the time you spend calling and connecting with people in order to get business.
So everybody that's new to the industry, it's called telemarketing. It really is. I mean, and good news is like, I guess I've been very lucky. I've had no angry calls in 4 months. Not one person has yelled at me. I've had some people like, no thanks, please remove me from the list and hang up. But no, if you come in gently with it and talk to people and be personable, it's been like, I was terrifying. I kept waiting for that angry customer was just gonna cuss me out, or and it just never happened. People are a lot nicer. I feel like that. Like now that I make all these calls, like people are a lot nicer than I expected. Yeah, I was terrified of that part of it. I'll be honest. That was the one thing I was like, dude, I just got to make these calls just to get people in the funnel, and once they're in the funnel, I can kind of lay out. It's been fine. I have no problems with it. So
yeah, I think the anxiety of what could happen is much bigger and much scarier and more stressful than what actually happens. The reality is when you do that lead generation, you make those phone calls, you send those messages, a lot of people just don't respond, right? Even friends and family, it's not a negative. They're just busy at the moment you chose to call them. And so it's important to realize.
And you never know, you may make a friend. I have a guy that I talk to every week, and every week the call lasts almost an hour. Like, just no matter what. I don't think we're making any progress, but I'm never going to stop calling this guy because it's awesome to talk to him. He's great conversation. He did say he was going to vote for me to be the best realtor in Suwannee. He's like, you're tenacious. It's awesome. I talk to you every week. I was like, yeah. Well, you keep talking and the conversation's good. I'm going to keep calling. I was like, you're going to buy a house here and we're going to go to lunch, man. That's what's going to
It could be your new best friend.
Yeah.
Well, hey, and you made progress. You got to talk to his wife. That was a positive.
Yeah, that was a big step. That was a big step. I found out that his wife took his credit cards away and she gives him an allowance now. So, we had a good conversation. Literally yesterday, I left Ignite class, which we'll probably touch on really briefly because we did talk time blocking, and I already kind of jumped ahead and did friends and family. Listen, you should be proud that you got your license. Tell everyone you know that you got your license and that you're excited to start this new stage in your life. That should be easy. If they're saved in your phone, give them a text, give them a call. Just inform people. That's it. That's the easiest part of this job, is telling the people you already know. Especially if you've lived in an area your entire life, your sphere might be pretty big, you know. Obviously, if you're new to an area or you've moved later in life, your sphere is smaller, and then that means you're going to find other ways to lead generate, um, which is the number one most daunting thing. Listen, if you read books, join a book club. If you like to go bowling, join a bowling league. And then every time you tell those people, hey, I do real estate, you know, and that's how you build a sphere. That's how you build your data. You want to build a connection with these people, have a real relationship with these people. And with that, you will be able to build your business. So that's how that works. The next big thing is you have your license. Usually, at least in Georgia, I can't speak for every state. Your brokerage holds the license. So you get your license, the commission has it, and you have to find a brokerage. And there are tons of them out there. Some brokerages will just take your license and hang it on the wall, and you pay the fee, and that's all the training you're going to get unless you go out on your own and buy your own post-licensing classes, which are out there on the internet. You can do that. Other brokerages provide training. We are both with Keller Williams, and so they have this class called Ignite that takes you through the very beginning of your real estate career with telling you how to talk to your friends and family. They even give you small scripts to practice. They tell you, I want to say basically step by step, the conversations of talking to a buyer, of talking to a seller, how to reach out to people. It even has a thing for reaching out to your friends and family in the very first class. Like, this is what you want people to know. They give you a script to tell people that you're a realtor now. So choosing a brokerage is very important. Obviously, once you're trained and you have your career, it's pretty easy to switch to another broker to save money, because obviously the more services that your brokerage provides for you, it's probably going to cost you more money, but they're providing you something. There are some brokerages that will provide you nothing, and you can hang your license on the wall for next to nothing. It all depends on what you want to be as a realtor and how much of a go-getter you are. You know what I mean?
Right. I think there's a lot of differences. When I got my license, I deep dived into brokerages. And then about 7 years after having my license, I decided that I was ready for a change. And I looked at a lot of brokerages. There are small boutiques. There are large franchises. There are a lot of there's a lot of companies that are interconnected behind the scenes. You can get a small franchise, you can get big corporation. There's a lot of options with brokerages. What I found is I did the math. If I'm expecting 100,000 GCI, what does it cost?
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the different splits. I looked at the monthly payments. I looked at what they offered. And when I looked at full service brokerages, those are ones that offer training, have weekly or monthly meetings, have a broker support model, have some kind of CRM, which is a contact management software program to hold my database. When I looked at these brokers that I would consider full service, kind of national brands, there was almost no difference in the compensation packages. Some of them would charge a little less per month and they'd have higher splits. Some would have lower splits and charge more per month. Now, since then, there's a lot of different brokerage models that have come onto the stage. There are some that you never cap out. A cap is how much you pay towards your broker. A lot of them in our area are somewhere between 10 to 20,000. You pay the broker a year, and once you pay that amount, you then receive 100% of your commission, or 90 or 99%, depending on where you are. When I analyzed the different brokerages, Jonathan, I found the differences were really negligible, because for a broker, in order to offer that, they all have the same cost. They just put together different packages. And that's not to say that one's right or wrong. It's about finding the one that fits you. And as a new agent, you hit the nail on the head. The more training you can get, market specific to your market, is invaluable.
Yeah. My big suggestion to everyone is join with the big ones, get trained up, figure out how to do the job. And then if you decide you want to step back and do a save your
They're
wallet a
key.
little bit, that's up
Hmm.
to you. But the training is invaluable because you can spend a lot of time spinning your wheels. And where we're at, they're really big on the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. It's written by Gary Keller, who's the founder of Keller Williams, or one of the founders of Keller Williams, and they teach it like the Bible, pretty much. They hold that thing in very high regard, and it is good information. It's a great way, if you follow it, to get a business off the ground and grow your business. I forget where I
It's
was going with this.
it's one of the few handbooks. Like, it is actually a handbook. It should be read like a textbook, not a traditional novel
Yeah.
on how to sell real estate. And any of these models, I think all the major brokerages might have a model. Any of these models will work.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is people will look at the model and they'll say, "Hey, I like this model, but I'm only going to do it 75%. I'm only going to do it 50%. Oh, I don't like this part." And they take the model apart and they pick and choose.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that you don't do, whatever percentage of the model you do, is the percentage of your results.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. So what they talk about in MREA, it hit me, is 20% of your work is going to do 80% of the return. And so focusing on the things that work is what's most important, because it's real easy to sit down every day and start going through your emails and start doing all the other side stuff in real estate. And you're still technically doing real estate, but a lot of that has no return because it's very easy. You can fill your entire week up with meetings and schedules, and there is some continuing education. You can do tons and tons of that. You can just become the most educated realtor on the planet. And there are minimums we have to hit. Don't get me wrong. I'm not insulting continuing education. Continuing education is good, but you can do an entire week every day, 3 hours a day of continuing education if you want. It's out there. You can get it through your association. You can get it through your brokerage. You can do it through the FMLS. There's education everywhere and you get credit for it. But it's really easy to fill your schedule up and go, well, I'm doing 3 hours a day of this, and then I'm going to do emails for 2 hours, and then I'm going to do this meeting on this other thing for an hour a day. And all of a sudden you've done 6 hours a day, but none of it is generating business. So scheduling that stuff and making sure you leave time for the grind, that
Right.
call on people is so important.
Yeah, because being busy and being productive are not the same thing. Real estate is an industry that it's very easy to be busy in, and productivity is actually your goal. And so, taking us all the way back to time blocking, that's what makes time blocking so important, because without that time blocking and you knowing exactly what you're doing in your day, nothing else falls into place. For me, especially when I got started, my time blocking was super important. I was doing expired listings. At that time, you were supposed to call them first thing in the morning. It was imperative. You would not reach them if you called them at noon, because there were so many agents calling. By the time noon came around, they just disconnected their phones or sent
Yeah.
everyone to voicemail. So my call time was very important. My time block started before that. It started at 7 a.m. and I'd prepped my list of who I was going to call. I had, I think we've discussed earlier, I'm a nerd. So I got a little trifold board, like the same thing you use for a science fair. I printed out my scripts like on paper. I cut them out and I put them on this science fair board. And so I would need to stand up. I couldn't sit down. If I sat down and talked, it wasn't good. My energy was wrong. And so I would stand up and I'd have this trifold board, and I'd have like that first hour to get everything prepared. I'd have to be super jazzed up and I would call. And unlike you, Jonathan, I didn't have happy people.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. I've not called a single expired listing at all. I kind of thought about it this week just to see what it was like. Just because we've been talking about it over the last couple of weeks through these podcasts. I was like, well, maybe I just throw it out there, see what it's like. I just to knock me off my rocker a little,
Well,
But yeah,
and to have a strategy, right? That's what I'd say. If you want to call expires, there's nothing wrong with it. Just have a strategy. But I would find that after doing that for 2 or 3 hours, my energy would be completely drained,
oh
right?
yeah,
I would be almost like performing. answering the phone, talking on, there was a lot of effort. There was a lot of energy. It was a new skill. It took a lot for me to do it. And so when I stopped at that 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock time from my lead generation, I then knew that like I needed to go to the gym, do something to shake off that feeling and all that extra adrenaline, whether the calls were good or bad that day, whether I got something or didn't get something, there was all this adrenaline left over. And so that's when I would go work out. And so protecting that time and then protecting your mindset would be the two most important things for putting your schedule together, I would think, for starting off. And then the next piece, like you've touched on, would be the database.
Yeah,
right?
it's
Making sure that you have people to call and that you have them in an organized system. That can be an Excel spreadsheet. That could be a CRM from your broker. That can be a CRM that you purchase outside of the brokerage yourself. It's just some way that you have a system for how people are called. One of the best models that I have seen is that an agent that has 201 people in their database and they have a system that they are communicating with that database a minimum of 36 times a year makes over 100,000 in GCI.
Yep, that's the 36 touch program. That is very much part of the MREA, Millionaire Real Estate Agent. I actually have it right here. I've read it already, and they tell you where we're at. Read it every year, because every time you're at a different stage in your career, so you're going to glean different stuff off of it every time you go through it. But yeah, this whole book is about keeping in touch with the people and how to add new people to your database. It's very, very simple. It's the number one question I get asked by everybody in my class. How do you make the phone calls? How do you know who to call? The thing is every person you talk to is a potential client in the future. So when you talk to people, instead of being the most interesting person in the room and talking about how you're in real estate and all stuff, ask about them, which is the Ford conversation that they teach you, which is family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And by asking them questions about themselves, most people will ask you questions about yourself. And it's just a matter of having a good conversation, being interested in what they have to do. And then at the end of it, you get a name and phone number and you stay in touch with that person. That person's now in your database. If you can get an email and other stuff too, cool. But you're just building a relationship with every person that you come in contact with. So that's the number one thing is everyone's like, who do you call? How do you do that? It's like everyone. You call everyone, and if you have a hard problem talking to people, do things that you like to do. So for me, I like to bowl. So I joined a bowling league. I like to race RC cars. We join a little league for RC cars. You read books, join a book club. You want to be natural in what you're doing. If you don't like to bowl, don't join a bowling league, But you want to do stuff that you enjoy, because then you're going to meet people that enjoy the same thing as you, and that's a genuine thing. It's not off of false pretenses. You don't want to do a bunch of things just to meet a bunch of people and not actually have any similar interests. I'm not saying you can't sell a house to someone you have no interest to, but if you're going to start a relationship with all these people, it's good to have finality,
Yeah, and they say that the people that you work with in real estate, they need to know you, like you, and trust you. And you build that relationship through commonality, right? Like you said, you don't have to have tons of overlap, but normally it starts with a seed or something that you guys have in common. That's how you got together in the first place, whether it's a common friend or family, or it's, like you said, a hobby or something that you enjoy doing.
And then the next thing I want to get to is some people don't just hear this, they need to read it. And there's a million books in real estate. And obviously, we've been talking about the MREA today, Millionaire Real Estate, but there are so many. I've read 6 books since I've had my license in 4 months that are strictly real estate related or sales related. There's a million ways to do it. So obviously, I'm going to recommend the MREA as one of the books to read. It's a really good way to kind of figure out how to get started if you're in a brokerage that doesn't provide any training. Get training and get a post license. There are classes for it. Do the class. But if you're not going to do the class and you MREA is a really good start, I feel, for most agents. How about you? Do you have something you would recommend?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Brian Buffini. I think he has a very conversational, friendly style of selling real estate. And so I like his book, Oh, by the way. That
Nice.
really resonated, especially after I had done all of my expireds. I took some classes with Dirk Zeller on how to sell expired listings. At the time, I feel like I paid $1 million for those classes and for the system with
Yeah,
RedX. And so that was hard. So the Oh, by the way, with Brian Buffini felt like a warm hug. It felt so nice after
which
that.
I also have. It's
Oh,
like this
look
is
at
my little
you.
library back here.
Yeah. I
This
just
one's
think
great
my
because
bookshelves
it's
are
thin.
further away. I don't think I have any
I'll
fridges.
be honest, I haven't read this one yet. I've been reading the Ninja Selling, and it's like I kind of
Mm.
stalled on it. I should probably just put it down and read this and maybe go back to it. Um, but I will read it. It should take no time at all. It's just a matter of doing it. It is,
It's a pretty
yeah,
short book.
yeah.
It's very good. It's a very good read. I also like The One Thing, which is once again a Gary Keller book.
It's just so weird. Everything you say, I happen to have already read it. Let's go back.
It's like I told you to read it or something, right?
I, I actually, yeah, maybe you did give me this one. I don't
Yeah.
remember.
I think I did. I give it to you. I don't
I
know.
know you told me to
I
read
put
the
it on
Compound
I put it
Effect.
on the list. Yeah, so that was the next one I was gonna say. When I first got started and I felt like I was doing all this work and I was having no result, the compound effect it was really impactful for me. I know for you, Jonathan, it wasn't quite as impactful. However, Darren Hardy had a lot of information that made a difference for me. It helped me to keep on going because I was really almost to that burnout point where I felt like I wasn't seeing the results I wanted. And the premise of his book is the right activity over the right amount of time produces the right results. And I needed to hear that, and I needed his stories and examples. It's a little salesy, but I needed that at that time
Hmm.
to keep
Yeah,
going.
it's the thing about incremental change. Instead of like, we all go into the January 1st and go, we're going to go to the gym, we're going to lose this weight, we're going to do that. And we put all this pressure on ourselves, and too much change right away makes it unsustainable. So his whole method is, I'm just going to cut out this one snack each week. I'm just going to go for the small walk each day. It's small changes over time produce big results. That's the whole premise of this book. I just summed it up, but it is a read. I read it. I'm
He
not
didn't
going to
like it.
insult it. I get it. Like to me, like I read it, and so I don't know how
It's
to say
okay.
it the right way.
It didn't speak to you. It's okay.
It didn't
You know,
speak to me, but basically to me, it was the same story over and over again in the book, where he just has examples of this friend did this, a small change, and this friend did that change, and this is how it progressed through life, and this is how they do it. So for me, it was like if you read the first 2 or 3 chapters, you didn't have to read the rest of the book because it's the same thing for the rest of the book. Does that make sense?
well, good. So,
But it
so
is a
buy
good
the
book.
book,
I,
read
I
the
do
first two
recommend reading
chapters.
it because it is valuable information.
That's
Whether you read the whole thing or not, that's okay. But it is cool about this incremental change in the results, and he has good examples in there.
Mhm.
But I'm one of those people you only have to tell me once. I got you.
Another one that's really good for habits and change is Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Oh, I don't
That
have that one.
that was a really well, put it on your list. That one's another good one that made a big difference. And then we touched on mindset, and this will be my last recommendation. We touched on mindset, and like I told you, when I started, the market wasn't good. It was a really tough time to sell real estate, and I had to figure out how to manufacture or muster up my own goodwill and good feelings, and and figure out how to keep going. And so there's a book by Hal Elrod, and it's called The Miracle Morning.
Mhm.
And it talks about that Hal was in um, I think he was in a drunk driving accident. And forgive me if I'm getting this wrong. He was in an accident, and it was horrific, and he should have died and everything. And he didn't. He lived. And at first everything was great, but he found that a few years later he started getting really depressed. And so after the appreciation and the awareness or of how lucky he was to be alive wore off, the newness of that he didn't have anything sustainable. And so what he talks about is using the miracle morning, or using a method where you do certain things each morning to
Mhm.
ensure that your day is a success. So James Clear touches on that as well when he talks about like making up your bed every morning and little things like that. Hal Elrod talks about it in The Miracle Morning. These are all really great mindset books to help you get in the right mental space to start
I
your real
actually
estate
feel
career.
like I have those upstairs. I think my wife bought those. She buys these books all the time, so I think we have them.
Yeah. Well, add those to your list, Jonathan, because
Yep.
even now I read one book a month.
Yeah,
Like
my goal
it is
this year
part
is
of my
two a month is what it is, but it can't all be this style book.
like
I'm a big
here's my book right now. This is obviously not
super
for
coach.
super coach. Yep. And I have a coaching program, which Jonathan knows, and so this is part of what I work on to be a better coach. And so I still read one business book a month in order to.
Yeah, so
Right.
that's my thing is one business book a month, but I got to read something fun too. So me being a nerd, it's sci-fi fantasy still. I can't help it. But it's like
Well,
I can't like back to back to back. The style book to me is like, okay, you know, I need a break. So
mhm.
breaking it up with something fun to read really helps me get to the next one because it keeps me reading instead of putting it down and sitting on a side. I'm not going to read for 3 weeks. I do
Mm,
like to read, so I need to get into like free my mind for a little bit and come back. Free my mind for a little bit and come back. So,
mhm. Totally.
anyways, I hope those are some good books for everybody and that everybody learned a little bit about laws and how to get started. We do highly recommend that if you're a newer agent or an agent that's doing it for a long time, if you have any questions, please ask them. We have a comment section on both Spotify and YouTube where this is posted. And we'd love to answer your questions, help everybody out with their careers. So once again, like, subscribe, notification bell, and leave comments. We will respond to them. Or if we get enough questions, we'll make a whole podcast on answering listener questions.
Yeah, I think, talking about our database, I think that would be a great episode for a whole thing next time
Yeah, we could do
or coming
definitely.
up soon because there's so many ways to do our database. And so that would be a great way to jump in there.
We will probably do that. We'll do a database specific episode. There's a ton coming. You guys just have to wait and find out. All right. Have a good one. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. You can scan a QR code in the lower left-hand side of the screen or click a link in the description. Have a fantastic one.